Chris Paladino, president of the New Brunswick Development Corporation. Thank you so much, sir. Thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for coming.
You know, I read about you, and it seems like you're involved in many, if not most, of the redevelopment projects throughout the state. And I think to myself, why don't more people know your name? Is that on purpose? Do you want to keep a low profile?
Well, look, you know what? You show up for work every day and you do your job, and if people notice, if it's a good thing, it's a good thing. If not, you kind of let things. Look, there aren't newspapers anymore.
Yeah.
People aren't reading newspapers, and there's not as many shows like that you're doing today anymore. So I think it was probably a lot easier to have a recognizable brand, 10, 15 years ago.
I get it, and but the attention that you would get for yourself, and I'll get off this topic in a second, but I just think it's interesting because it is interesting to me who rises up, whose name gets recognized, and whose name doesn't get recognized. Would you ever want, because you have so much experience in redeveloping areas, to run for office, to be involved in politics?
Oh no, absolutely not.
And why
absolutely not? You know, I think that's a time that came and went. Probably when I was 25 years old, I may have thought of that. But I think the reason I would have wanted to be involved in politics then, I think I found another niche, is that from a public policy standpoint, doing the work that we do can have a tremendous impact on the cities of New Jersey. So I'm probably kind of satiated that way. Yeah,
because you're actually getting things done.
Because we're doing some things.
It's difficult to get things done in that arena. It's probably a little easier.
I mean, look, I've spent time in government. I worked for Governor Florio when I was probably 28 years old. I was a deputy director of the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. Kind of being more, I started to gravitate to being much more hands-on in the work that I do. I'm not really good at going to meetings. I usually have a pretty short attention span because there's work to be done. So I don't think I really would have lasted very long in government.
I admittedly did this wrong. I should have started with what you did and then said, why doesn't more people know your name? So let's back up for a second. How many projects do you have going on right now?
Well, we have two projects that are in process and in the ground. The project that's the furthest along, and this time next year we will be opening 700,000 square feet, which represents $220 million worth of investment on the boardwalk in the Chelsea neighborhood of Atlantic City. There we cobbled together a partnership of Stockton University to build their Atlantic City campus. We're going to house 500 students on the boardwalk. While we have built student housing in the past, it's the first time I have ever built a resident building for students with surfboard storage.
They're very excited about this.
We've done bike storage, but the surfboard storage, I learned all about how you have to keep surfboards. A new academic building that can accommodate like 2,000 students during the period of the day. And then South Jersey Gas made a big commitment, and they're moving their headquarters back to Atlantic City. They left in the early part of the 60s when a lot of other people left Atlantic City, and they're bringing over 200 jobs to Atlantic City.
What's the price tag of that project? Of what you're doing?
$220 million is being invested.
Now, you told me a moment ago before we started this, you have $1.8 billion in projects.
We've had $1.8 billion in projects that we've done over the last 20 years here at the New Brunswick Development Corporation since we've been here.
And where can people, if people went around the state, where do they see your work?
Well, we've built large student housing projects in Newark. With what was the University of Medicine Dentistry, we built the first housing for medical students, nurses, doctoral candidates, and residents at the medical school. We, after laying dormant for 10 years, we helped Rutgers renovate, restore, and bring back to life one of the most beautiful buildings in Newark, 15 Washington. It used to be the old American Insurance Company. It became the Rutgers Law School, and it was abandoned about 15 years ago. 350 Rutgers students now live in that building, and classes are taught in that building. And we took the first 5 stories and we restored them to exactly what it was like in 1920 when the building was built. Invested $90 million in 10 months. To get that building open. The chancellor of the university lives on the top 3 floors of the building. In Atlantic City, as we said, we've got this large project underway and hope to announce others in short order. And then most of our historic work has been in New Brunswick. So in New Brunswick, we've done everything from privatize most of the government infrastructure. So we own the state courthouse, we own the New Brunswick police station, we own the county administration building. So we've built a government district. We own we were the developers of the Heldridge Hotel. We're not the owners of it, but we're the developers of the Heldridge Hotel and Conference Center, which is a 4-star conference center.
And let me stop you for 1 second, because you're making an important point as you go along that. You're talking about academia, you're talking about nonprofits, you're talking about commercial, you're talking about government, and it seems as I read about you, that's the secret to your success. The secret to your success is you're able to bring all these entities together.
Yeah, if you look at some of our projects, 4 years ago we opened the Gateway project here at the train station. It's the New Brunswick Parking Authority, it's Rutgers, it's a private developer, Penrose, it was Devco. You take a group of people and organizations that have capital investment on their agenda, but they're probably not going to do it themselves. They don't really know how to move from A to B because they do other things. They do open heart surgery. They educate students. They do, they run a government. They run the judiciary. And you take like minds and like ideas and you bring them into a room and then you give them a pathway to get something accomplished. What we always find is that the project becomes bigger, better, has a broader spectrum of a population that it impacts. It invests more money, it creates more jobs when you get 3 or 4 or 5 different entities. Let them be not-for-profits, let it be the healthcare industry, let it be the university, let it be the private sector, to kind of pool their resources and to think big. And that's what we try to do.
Probably the most important thing, though, is it probably wouldn't happen if you didn't get all those people together.
It wouldn't happen, and if it happened, it would be marginalized.
What's in the future? Can you talk about what you're going to be doing next?
Well, right now, we're going in the ground with $170 million investment of the New Brunswick Performing Arts Center. We are building 2 new theaters. We are building a lyric theater, which can accommodate ballet, opera, musical theater. We're building a second dramatic theater. We're building rehearsal spaces, and this is going to be Broadway quality. I mean, we're actually already hearing from Broadway producers who are saying, this is great. We don't have to go to Houston or Nashville anymore to begin our runs of shows. We're going to do them in New Brunswick, and our actors can stay in New York City, and they can come out and do their shows. We expect, right today, the New Brunswick Cultural District attracts about 300,000 people a year. We think that we'll add another 100,000 people who will be coming to New Brunswick to these 3 theaters. First time that Rutgers is actually a full partner in the professional arts community in New Brunswick. They're going to put their opera program in this building. We're building and helping pay for this by building a 25-story apartment building with Penrose, our partner from Philadelphia. And we're doing an 80-20, 80% market rate, 20% set aside for affordable, and those 20% of affordable are going to be marketed towards people in the arts community. So we want people who are actors, musicians, poets, people who build stages, to actually live in that neighborhood and to be part 24/7 of what's going on.
That's great. Now, in many ways, you cut against the grain of everything we hear about New Jersey. In many ways, you cut against the grain because there's development going on, there's businesses showing up, things are happening. When we're being told people are leaving, there's no new development corporations are leaving. I want to talk to you about that and a little bit more about Atlantic City, because that's where you're really making news now. When we continue our conversation with Chris Paladino, the president of the New Brunswick Development Corporation, when Jersey Matters continues.